Today we have Michaela and Portia in the studio, and we're going to look at a very interesting question. How do you portray Chinese people in Hollywood movies? Well, originally the answer was dress up white people. I'm going to pass that question over to you guys.
So, do you remember perhaps the first Chinese character on screen? I think his name was Dr. Fu Manchu.
Yeah, although I'm not old enough to have seen it in the cinemas, but I remember that it wasn't even played by an Asian guy, it was played by a white guy.
Yeah, he was portrayed as this very evil, conniving supervillain. And I guess that's sort of how the Chinese people were portrayed in film back in the 1930s.
So yeah, the actor Boris Karlov, who played Dr. Fu Manchu, originally he was already a very famous and a legendary actor in horror movies playing villains, and then he was used to play a Chinese character in Dr. Fu Manchu. So were the Chinese always portrayed as the evil in the cinemas of the 30s?
No, they weren't. And the movie that comes to mind for me is a movie called The Good Earth, which was produced in 1937, and it's based on a best-selling book by an author named Pearl Buck. And Pearl Buck, she grew up actually in China, and she wrote what was a really sincere story about two farmers in old agrarian China. And unfortunately, in the creation of this movie, the two main Chinese characters are played by two very much white actors. And so these actors are clad in yellow face, they have, their eyelids are pulled back and they speak in accents, and it just comes across very offensive to the viewer.
Yeah, those two don't look very Asian,
No.
but there's one that seems to be Chinese. Who is she?
So her name is Anna May Wong, and Anna May Wong she's kind of considered the first Chinese film star, and she auditioned for the main role in The Good Earth, but she was actually turned down for the role in favor of a white actress because the producer didn't perceive her as beautiful enough, and so they wanted to sell the movie and they didn't think that her Chinese face was going to sell. So she ended up actually going into European cinema because she didn't feel that she was as typecast there. The stereotypical dragon lady, the lotus lady, and she didn't want to do that.
Interesting, because in Europe things were not much better at the time. In 1962, the first James Bond movie came out, and the bad guy was a half Chinese, half German character that was fully played by a Caucasian actor wearing a Chinese dress. And by the way, did you know that in 1956, John Wayne, the ultimate American, played Genghis Khan in The Conqueror?
You do well, Kumlik, for while I have fingers to grasp a sword and eyes to see, your treacherous head is not safe on your shoulders, nor your daughter in her bed.
I think, shortly after that, probably peak ridiculousness of Yellowface was in 1961 with Breakfast at Tiffany's, in which Mickey Rooney, who is a Caucasian actor, plays Mr. Yunyoshi, who is supposed to be a Japanese man, but he is just the ultimate caricature. He has these prosthetic buck teeth, and he speaks it with this accent, and his actions are very fumbled, and it's just funny to see him opposite Holly Golightly, who is a very elegant and well-spoken woman. And so the two just contradict each other on screen, and it's just absurd.
Darling, I am sorry, but I lost my key.
But that was 2 weeks ago. You cannot go on or keep ringing my bell. You disturb me. You must have a key made.
So things started to actually change with in the early 70s with Bruce Lee. So Bruce Lee did the massive breakthrough by bringing a proper Asian actor onto the big screen.
Right.
And this kind of paved the way for many other actors, but it wasn't a straightforward transformation. Right after Bruce Lee, we actually have a lot of other martial arts actors that are actually white. So we have Chuck Norris, we have Jean-Claude Van Damme, and this kind of helped actually opened up the mind to a lot of like Western people like me on the idea of like traveling to China for like martial arts and like for training and this kind of stuff. Even though it was like maybe somehow stereotyped, but at the same time, like it kind of helped pave the way for generations to come.
Yeah, and I imagine that paved the way for stars like Jackie Chan, who became, right, the ultimate martial arts star in Hollywood.
So by the 80s, did things improve? I know by the 80s there were already real Asian characters played by Asians. So did they do well?
Well, I don't think so. I think, for example, we have the very famous 1984 John Hughes movie, 16 Candles. And in that movie, we have a character, his name is Long Duck Dong. And just to kind of paint the picture, whenever Long Duck Dong appears on screen, there's a gong noise.
What's happening, hot stuff?
So I think maybe they didn't do it that well. And Long Duck Dong, he is kind of just the most stereotypical, well, negatively stereotypical Asian man. He's very socially inept. He's kind of sexually immature, but at the same time, very sexually obsessed. And his love interest is a woman who is probably double his height and size. And he just looks diminutive next to her, and it all feels very offensive.
Very clever dinner. Appetizing food fitting neatly into interesting round pie.
Yeah, and if we look at the movie at the same era, we can think about some of the most famous movies from the 80s, like Indiana Jones and the Goonies. They had a Chinese character, actually a kid, that was played by the same actor that grew up to become the supporting actor of Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Sure.
And I think like his life can show the improvement on Asian representation in Hollywood, because when he was a child, he was cast to portray very stereotypical roles for Asians. So he was always like this nerdy kid that was like good with inventing technology. And then when he grew up and he played supporting role in Everything Everywhere All at Once, he actually now is like plays like a real Asian American, like with a real immigrant story.
Well, bringing us up to date, we have Asian faces on our screens all the time. We have TV shows like Kim's Convenience. We have Fresh Off the Boat, which are really well received. They're really funny. I mean, can you think of any others?
Yeah, recently I watched Beef. I don't know if
yes,
you've seen it.
Of course.
It's amazing. It's the whole cast is Asian, apart from maybe like one or two actresses, and it's really, really fun. It's very innovative. The storytelling is amazing, and it also feels very authentic.
Babe?
When Beef came out, it was actually a low point in the East and West geopolitical struggle. So I thought it was very refreshing when I saw this TV show with a full Asian cast and written by Asians, coming out from a Hollywood American production. So I thought it was really new and unexpected.
Yeah. I think, that kind of just goes to show that when the newspapers and the media are getting too much, maybe you just kick your feet up and you turn on a movie.